Love bubble word, I'm going to be using wash away stabiliser, my largest hoop with the 6x10 files, bobbin and matching thread, my scissors, my fabrics and batting cut to size. You may or may not be aware that when you use a larger hoop, it's a lot more difficult to keep the tension with your stabiliser. So although I've got double-sided tape on the outside of my inner hoop, I'm also going to be using some pins around the edge of the hoop. So I've put most of them in, and it just remains to do this last one. And I just pop it in level with the hoop top, turn it around and pop it in there, and that will hold my stabiliser nice and firm. I'm going to pop this into my machine and stitch round number 1 now, which is the outline. I forgot to say before that the most important thing is stitching these files in order. You do have to start with the VE as the first hooping that you do. I know it's difficult to see here, but you will be able to see once I've added fabrics and they're stitched in place. So I'm going to turn my hoop over and I'm going to add a backing fabric over the letters, making sure that I cover the whole outline, and I'm just going to tape it in place with a little bit of masking tape, painter's tape if you're in the United States. Okay, and next I'm going to place my batting over the top, and the piece for the VE is slightly larger than for the LO, so I'm going to put that down there and just use a little bit of tape to hold it in place. It just stops it sliding around while it's being stitched. Okay, I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 2, which is going to secure the batting down. Okay, now that that's stitched on, I'm going to cut off the excess stabiliser. Next I'm going to put my first fabric over the letter E, and there it is. Just remove the bit of tape that I've got marking it. I'm going to place a little bit of tape top and bottom to keep it in place while it stitches. I'm going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 3, which will secure the fabric to the hoop. I'm going to trim away the excess fabric along this edge of the E. And then I'm going to place my second fabric over the V. And once more I'm going to tape that in place so that it doesn't move. I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 4. Next I'm going to trim up between the 2 letters. I'll turn this around like so. Okay, I'm now going to pop that in my machine and stitch round number 6, and that's going to zigzag along this edge between the 2 letters just to neaten it up. I've changed my thread in the machine to white, because next it's going to do the quilting on the letter E, and then directly after I'm going to stitch round number 7, which will do the quilting on the V. I'm now going to trim up all the excess fabric, both front and back. And I'm going to start with the back. I'm going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 8, which is going to do the zigzagging around the letters. Now I'm going to stitch round number 9, which is the satin stitching around the letter E. And now I'm going to stitch round number 10, which is the satin stitch on the V. So now that that's stitched out, we can free this from the hoop, so I'm going to turn it over and cut it away. Okay, I'm now going to trim up along the edge here just to make sure that it's close to the stitching, because that's where it's going to join to the next piece. And there it is. I'm not going to worry about the wash-away stabiliser around the edges just yet, because that will all be removed at the end. So I've hooped my stabiliser and I've loaded the second file with the LO in it into my machine, and I'm just going to pop my hoop in there now and stitch round number 1, which is the outline. I'm going to turn my hoop over so the back's facing upwards, and I'm going to lay my fabric down with the right side up, so the wrong side facing the hoop. And I'm just going to take that in place so that it doesn't move. And now I'm going to place my batting down on top of the front here. And just a little bit of tape to hold that in place as well. I'm going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 2, which is going to secure it. I'm going to trim away all the excess batting. Now I'm going to place my fabric over the letter L and just hold it in place with a little bit of tape. going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 3. Okay, I've trimmed up along the edge here where the O is going to join next to the L, and now I'm going to place my fabric over the top. And I'm going to put that in my machine and stitch round number 4. Now that the centre heart has been defined with the stitching, I'm going to place my fabric over the top, pop it back in my machine and stitch round number 5, which is going to secure it. So now I'm going to trim away all the excess fabric, both back and front. I've had a little bit of an oops moment. I've actually cut through the stabiliser there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to patch it just for now. So I've just got an offcut from a previous hooping. I'm going to place that over there and just tape it in place. I just want to be careful here because if I've got any stitching going on, I don't want the tape to get jammed up in amongst it. So I'm just going to put this carefully where it's not going to get in the way. A little bit there, I think. And that should be enough to enable my machine to stitch through here. When it's doing the satin stitch, that's when it's at risk the most because there's a lot of strain on the fabric and the stabiliser here, so it's better to patch it. Okay, let's see if I can carry on and cut this without cutting the more holes in it. Next I'm going to stitch round 6, and that's going to do the zigzagging around the join here. Next around 7 and 8, which is going to do the quilting on the O and the L. Next is round number 9, and that's going to zigzag all around the 2 pieces, and it's going to stop where I need to join the other 2 letters to this one. Before we go any further, I'm just going to trim up the patched area that where I repaired earlier. It just gets the tape out of the way. So next we're going to join these 2 pieces together. So I'm just going to turn this around so that I can see what I'm doing. And where you've got the area that's got no zigzag stitching is where you're going to join them, and you want to have this line of stitching here sitting directly on top of this line of stitching here. I'm just going to tape that in place for a second. And I'm just going to pop a pin in. With pins, be careful, keep them well away from the stitch area. You don't want them getting tangled up in your machine, it will damage them. Okay, that's not going to go anywhere. So I'm now going to pop this back into my machine, and I'm going to stitch round number 10, which is going to join the two pieces, and it's going to do zigzagging along here. I've got my matching thread and matching bobbin in my machine now, and the next round is number 11, and that's going to do the satin stitching on the O, and then directly after that it'll be round number 12 to do the satin stitch border on the L. And lastly the satin stitch on the L, round number 12. So all it remains now is to free this from the hoop and to dissolve all the wash away stabiliser from the edge of the lettering. Okay, so I've got some water and some cotton buds, and I'm just going to run this around the edge. And there it is, finished, ready to spread the love. I hope you enjoyed this stitch along. If you did, please give me a thumbs up. Don't forget to subscribe to be notified of new videos as they're published. And thanks very much for joining me.